A very good morning, everyone. I hope that you are doing well, and also welcome to week 11's tutorial slash lab class. And in today's class, we will be looking at some of the CSS components of website development. Now, a few reminders just before we begin with, we will be spending close to about 1.5 hours to 1 hour 45 minutes in our lab class today. So just before we begin off, okay, your project, the very last project, it is already up on Moodle. So yesterday we went around discussing it. Those of you who missed on to yesterday's class, please feel free to go and look at the video and the recording for yesterday's class and try to catch up. Okay, moreover, apart from project 2, you have one more assessment left for the semester, and that particular assessment is short test 2, which carries 10% towards your coursework. Now, as per the discussion in yesterday's class, we will have it in week 13. This is week 11, week 12, week 13, and your short test 2 is completely based on HTML. Okay, so HTML only, nothing else apart from that. So those are the reminders. Okay, your project 2 is supposed to be done in pairs. That means 2 of you joined up together. If you wish to do it alone, you're most welcome to do so. All right, moving on. In today's class, in week 11 lab, we will be looking at CSS. First of all, we will be doing some introduction to CSS. We'll be looking at some of the CSS syntax. There are generally 2 syntaxes, so we will look at them, and within one of the syntaxes there are 2 more. So we have in the syntax we have, yeah, we'll look at that. Moreover, we have selectors and declarations. Now those are the 2 major syntaxes, so we'll look at them in broad. And within declaration syntax you have property and values, so we'll be looking at that as well. Now, there are 3 types of CSS. We have inline, internal, and external. We will be looking and practicing those. We'll look at what is the difference between a HTML comment and a CSS comment. And finally, we'll be looking at CSS color. Now, CSS color generally is composed of background color, text color, and border color. So these are the things that we'll be looking at in today's class. Now, next week is week 12, and by the end of week 13, we will finish up with CSS. Week 14 and 15, week 14 will try to make a combination, or we try to make a complete website. And week 15 is the very last week. Remember, your assignment is due somewhere at the end of week 14. Okay, week 15 is for you to sum up all work and get ready for your final exams. Fortunately, for CIN535, you do not have a final exam. Okay, so that's the good thing about this 100% coursework. However, you do know that you have been loaded up with a lot of assessments for CIN535. So without further delays, let's go and start working on few things. Okay, so first of all, what I will do is I will open up a Word document, and in the Word document I will actually go and write down few things which I also wish for you to write it down somewhere. Probably you can put it down somewhere on Moodle, on a forum, or you can have it written down on a piece of paper where you normally go around revising things. Okay, so we are talking about, or we are going over CSS today. Now, CSS generally stands for cascading style sheets. Okay, now CSS, the long form is cascading style sheets. Now, what CSS does is describes how HTML elements are to be displayed on screen or other types of media. So it basically describes how HTML elements are to be displayed on screen or other types of media. Now, the thing about CSS is that you can go around and control multiple layouts or multiple pages, layouts slash web pages, or in brackets web pages, at once. Now, we have three types of CSS. You have inline, you have internal, and external. Now, with the use of an external CSS page or CSS, what you can do is you can control multiple web pages at once. Okay, that means you do not need to go and style your pages individually. Now, that brings up to our next point is we have three types of CSS. First one is inline. Next is internal. And the last one is external. Please write this down somewhere. Do not be surprised if some of these may appear in your short test too. Even though I said it's about HTML, now some portions of CSS can also be covered by HTML. You have a minute to write it down. Okay, Ashnil and others, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but it's like cutting off at times.
Cutting off at times. Okay. Okay, give me a second. Give me a second. Let me. Oh yeah, I have low network connectivity over here today. Give me a second. Let me hop into another network. All right. Okay, can you hear me clearly now?
Yeah, a bit better now.
All right, moving on. Now, with CSS, normally we have something called as syntax. Syntax. Now, in programming terms, when you say syntax, these are generally common of the signs and symbols that we use, or some of the common data types also come under syntax. Now, it's likely you have the same thing with CSS. Let me put this down. Now we have H1 and then a open curly bracket or open parentheses. Color is red, small c. And then you have close parentheses. Okay. Now have a look at this. Now your H1 here, okay, we call this as a selector. H1, generally it's called as a selector. And where you have color, red, now that portion is called a declaration. All right. So H1 here, this is called as a selector. Now, color is red. The entire thing is what you call as declaration. Now, within your declaration, okay, so your declaration is generally divided into two parts, okay, and these two parts are property and value. So if you look at your declaration, color red, okay, and we're missing into a semicolon, it should be included in there. Okay, so color is generally the property, and the value for the property that is color is red. So red becomes the value. Let me repeat that. Entire syntax that is given is H1 color red. Now H1 is the selector. Now selector is generally a HTML element, okay? And then you have a declaration. Declaration, that means you're trying to declare something. So what are you declaring? That the color of heading 1 to be changed to color red. Now, within your declaration, you have two parts. You have property and you have value. So your property in this case is color, and the value for color is red. All right. So selector, declaration, property, and value. I'll give you a minute to sum this down and then we'll move on. Okay, now next up, I want you to save this document. Now this is where I want you to save this. Now remember, we had a folder for HTML basics. Okay, I'd like you to go and create another folder, and this time name the folder as CSS. Now I will go and place this inside my parent folder where I'm saving everything for CIN535. So lab, okay, and there you go. So I have a folder for CSS. Now I would like you to go and save this document inside the CSS folder. So I'm going to hit on the file menu, the save command, since you're saving it for the very first time. So save command, and I want it to be saved in the very same folder, CSS folder, that I just created. And give the name as CSS basics. Okay, moving on. Let's close this off. And straight up, I would like you to go and open up Notepad. And without further delays, can you go and put down your basic HTML skeleton? Basic HTML skeleton, quickly get it done. I'll give you 10 minutes for that. Okay, is there anyone who is still putting in the HTML skeleton? No? If not, this is what I want you to do. Now, placing your title as inline CSS and save this inside the CSS folder that you had just created. So the name of the file that you will have is inline css.html. So inline CSS, if you want, you can have two separate words, css.html, and then click on the save button. Please get it saved up, and then we'll continue from there. Okay, so once you have sorted that out, this is what we'll do next. Now, inside our body text, let's go and put in a heading 1 and also put in a heading 2 and also a paragraph. Now, do notice that I am placing the opening and the closing text together, and I would like you to do the same. All right, now for the first one, let's put down a heading, and this time we'll put the heading as Fiji National University for heading 1. Heading 2, let's put down Department of Computer Science and Information Systems. And paragraph, let's put it down as CIN535 hyphen multimedia and communications. Okay, so once you've done that, this is what I would like to do next. Go to that folder, okay, the CSS folder, and open up inline css.html file, and you should be able to see something as what it is loading up now. Still loading. All right. Do you have something as such?
Yep.
Okay. Now, what we are supposed to do in here is, okay, we will try to go and apply some form of styling in it using inline styling. Now with inline styling, what happens is you are applying a unique style to a single HTML element only. That means if you go and have a look at your code, H1 here, this is a single HTML element. H2 here, is again a single HTML element, and paragraph here is also a HTML element. Now let's go and insert in another paragraph and type down, we are learning CSS today. And refresh that up on your browser. All good? Okay. Now to apply an inline style, this is what we'll do. Now, like I mentioned earlier, you're applying a unique style to a single HTML element. So H1 here, this complete opening and closing HTML tag, it's a single element. So if I have to apply a style and I want to change the color of font to red, at the moment it's black, it's going to change it to red. So I'll type down style is equals to open and close quotes, and in that I'll put down color. Okay, and then this is your declaration, color is property, and the value that you want to have is red, followed by a semicolon, and control S to save. Right, so once you've done that, go and refresh your page. This is what you get. Now this is an example of an inline style. Let's do it once again, and this time let's do it with heading 2, and let's go and apply a color of blue. Okay, so style is equals to open and close inverted commas, or quotes as you'd like to call it. Okay, I would suggest straight up the quote, insert in a semicolon so that you do not forget it later onwards. So within your quotes, you'll put down color, colon, blue. Pardon me, your semicolon needs to come in before the quote. And control S to save. Go and refresh your browser. This is what you get. Simple? Yes, no, simple? This is pretty simple. Okay, this is one of the easiest CSS code that you'll ever see. Okay, inline, but do remember with inline, single HTML element at a time. I'd like you to go and do the same with the paragraphs. So the very first paragraph, let's go and change it to color orange, and the other one to color purple. Can you do that, everyone? I'll give you about 5 minutes to do that. It's 9:28, 9:33, we'll mark it up. You have 5 minutes on you. Got 2 more minutes with you. Okay, let's move on and I'll mark it up. So the first paragraph, you were supposed to change it to color orange. So style is equals to opening closing quotes. Within it, you have a semicolon and you put down your property color. I've set to orange. Okay. And you can always go and save this up, go and test and see whether you have that color change into orange. Yes, it did. So that means you have entered the codes correctly. The next paragraph, again, style is equals to open and close quotes. Within that, you have a semicolon. So just in front of the semicolon, you will enter your property color and your value as purple. Did I say purple? Yes. Okay, purple. And
Yes, sir.
thank you. And then refresh it up. So you have your fourth paragraph changed into color purple. Now, this is an example of inline styling, whereby you're controlling a single element at a point in time. All right. Now, I hope this is clear. Now, why I want you to be very attentive in inline, internal, and external CSS, because you should be able to have a clear distinction between which one is what and which one does what and which one controls what all in a HTML web page. All right. So very quickly, what we'll do is we'll go and click on the file menu. And within the file menu, we'll hit the save as button. So inside your CSS folder, let's go and type it as internal CSS.html and then hit the save button. So your file name changes to internal CSS. Okay. So I would like you to go to your folder and double click on internal CSS to open up that HTML file in a browser. Okay, both the files will be same, inline and internal. We yet to change the title, so it's still reading as inline CSS. We'll change it. Okay, so ensure that you are on internal CSS notepad file. Now look at the codes. Okay, it's same as the previous one because we have just made another copy of it. Now your title, can you go and change it to internal CSS? Press Ctrl S to save. Now go back to your browser, refresh it up. Now the title is reading as internal CSS. Pretty good so far. Now what I want you to do next is, you know, your elements of the inline style that you have, can you go and remove all of those and just have heading 1 and paragraphs in there. Control S to save. After that, can you go and refresh your browser? All of it should be in color black. Okay, all done. Now, with the internal CSS, what happens is over here, you are applying style to a single HTML page and not element. Now remember, with inline, you're applying it to a single HTML element. For example, H1, only one of these H1s, only one of the paragraphs out of the two. Now with internal, you are directly applying style to the entire page at once. And this is controlled by pairs of style tag. Now this is what will happen. Now inside your head section of the skeleton, you will go and insert in opening style tag followed by a closing style tag. Once you've done that, Control S to save, go back to your browser, F5 to refresh, or hit the refresh button. So far, you will not see any changes because you have not applied a style yet. You have just entered style text. Done that, everyone? This is what I want you to do next is this. Okay. Now within your style tag, we'll indent a bit towards the right hand side. Okay, and then let's say you want to change the color of your heading 1 to color blue. Okay, so this is what you'll do. You write down H1, okay, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, okay, take a cursor in the middle, press enter, and indent a bit towards the right hand side. Okay, now in the middle, this is what you'll write. Okay, right underneath the parenthesis. So I want to change the color of my heading 1 to color blue. So color colon blue followed by a semicolon, Control S to save. So inside the style tags, first of all, you'll put in your selector H1, and then your declaration color is equals to blue, color is the property, and the value is blue. Okay, please ensure that your declaration goes inside the open and close parentheses, the curly braces that you have. And then Control S to save, go back to your browser, F5 to refresh, or press on to the refresh button in the browser. Does it change the color to color blue? If it doesn't,
Yes, sir.
okay, thank you. If it doesn't, do have a look at the code and see if entered everything correctly. Now here's a trick with internal CSS. Now once you're declaring or putting in your selector, which is H1 inside the style, so if you have more than one H1s, okay, it should change all the color of the H1 to blue. For instance, let me copy this and paste this here, and over here I'll write down College of Engineering, comma, Science and Technology. Do the same. Put another H1 and write down College of Engineering, Science and Technology. Control S to save. Now automatically it should change the color of College of Engineering, Science and Technology to color blue. Why? Because you are telling the entire web page that whatever H1s that you have should change the color to blue. So if I would go and refresh my browser, I have this coming in color blue. Now, this is the major difference between inline and internal. Inline, you control individual elements, HTML elements at one point in time. Whereas internal, you're controlling an entire web page at a point in time. Okay, now let's go and also feed in some more colors in here. This time choose your selector as H2. Okay. And give the color of H2 as green, followed by a semicolon. Now we are learning the very basics of CSS over here. Now, this very basic is the main root of the entire CSS. And just like a normal plant, if the root is not strong, you will not have beautiful plants. Likewise here, if you're not able to learn the roots of CSS properly, you will not understand how the entire concepts work. All right. Now go back to your browser, refresh. So it changes Department of Computer Science and Information Systems to color green. Now, finally, I would like you to go and change the color of your paragraph to color of your choice, any color. So selector P, open and close parenthesis. So I have that. And within that, I will go and feed in a color. So any color of your choice. You have time till 9:45 to do that. Okay, moving on. So that was on internal CSS. Now, remember, let's go and reiterate on the differences between the two types of CSS that we have learned so far. So you have inline CSS rather, it is applied so that you can have or you can control styling for a single HT element within a web page. Now with internal CSS, this is where you are trying to apply style to a entire single HTML page. Difference: inline deals with single HTML elements, internal deals with single HTML page. Okay, the next one that we have is called external CSS. And this is what I want you to do. Okay, now let's go to file and hit the save as button and name your file as external css.html and then hit the save button. After that, this is what I would like you to do. Can you go and remove all of the codes within your style tags? So you come to the original section now and press Ctrl S to save it. At the same time, can you change the title of your web page to external CSS? Ctrl S to save. Now, moving on, this is what you are supposed to do next. Go to your CSS folder and double click and open up external CSS. So inline, internal, external. So external CSS, everything should be in color black. All set? Now, open up Notepad, file for external CSS. Now, your external CSS type is generally whereby you try to apply style to the entire website. Now, this is the difference. For inline, single HTML element. Internal, single HTML page. External is whereby you apply style to the entire website. Now, website is a combination of many web pages. Okay. Now, the thing about external CSS is that not only you apply to the entire website, but you have to create a separate file altogether, a CSS file. So using the CSS file, so whatever changes you apply, it should make some changes to the HTML page in which you have linked it to. Okay. Now, within your head tags, let's go and insert a link. So right underneath head tag, you'll put down something as called a link. Okay. Now, straight after the word link, you put down rel, which means relation or relative rather. The relative is, it is a style sheet. That means what is the relation to this this link to another file that you're about to connect. Now the other file is a style sheet, therefore it will apply some form of style. And also href, hyperlink reference, give it as blank at the moment because you have not yet created our CSS page. Control S to save. Go back to your browser, F5 to refresh. You should not see any changes. So link relative is equals to, in quotes, style sheet, and hyperlink reference is equals to, in quotes, blank at the moment. We have not actually created a style sheet yet. All right. Now, straight after that, this is what I want you to do. Pay keen attention, otherwise you would be lost. So you'll go and click on the file menu and click on new. So you're opening up a new notepad file. Okay. Now, once you've done that, this is what I want you to do next. Go to file, hit the save button. Go to file, hit the save button, and ensure that you are saving this inside the CSS folder that we had created right at the very beginning of this class. And then name your CSS file as style.css. Now you can give the name as anything: tom.css, mary.css, joka.css, or anything, supermarket.css, and so forth. Okay, but ensure to have your extension .css with it, else this would not work. Now once you've done that, hit the save button. Now I want you to have a look at this. So this is your HTML pages. Look at how your style sheet looks. Different, okay? Because if you clearly go and look at the file type, okay? Now you have a HTML document, you have a Word document, and now you have a cascading style sheet, CSS document, okay? So that's the major difference between the two. Now, what you'll need to do next is, remember hyperlink reference, we have not named the file yet. Now we have already created a style.css file. So what we'll do is we'll go and open up external.css in a notepad file. Both of them need to be opened, style sheet and also external.css. And your hyperlink reference, name it to style.css. So this is where you are completing the linking between the two files. If something goes wrong here in the linking phase, if you're not giving in the correct name, if you're not feeding in the correct relative, or you're missed on to any of those codes, okay, your link will not work. Okay, so style lowercase s, okay, style lowercase s, this should also match. If it doesn't, it will not work. Done, everyone? All right, now let's go and test it out. Okay, now your external.css is already opened up. Now what I want you to do is, now for us to control the styling of this page, everything needs to be done in style.css. So the very first thing we can do is this. Let's go and change the entire color of the web page. Here, let's say to color yellow, very significant color. Okay, so body. Remember, body is the visible element. And let's feed in background hyphen color colon yellow followed by a semicolon. Now once you've done that, Control S to save. Go back to your browser, the files are linked. Now something went wrong with mine, so at the moment it's not refreshing. Let's see what went wrong. So your background color, background hyphen color colon yellow, now that seems to be okay. So this is fine. Style.css, let me see this. Relative style sheet, style.css. This is not working. Let me have a look at it once more. Pardon me. There you go. Is it working for any one of you?
Yes, for me it's working.
It's working. I think at the moment what is happening is my PC is having some cache memory errors.
So could it be the file name? I think it's hash.external CSS.
Come again?
Sorry, the asterisk in front. For this notepad, it's saved. Right, now it's okay, external CSS.
Okay, okay. Yeah, because the hash indicates it's not being saved. Okay, yeah. So thank you. I think I had not saved my external CSS file. Is it working for everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, working. Okay. Now, another time where you may face a common error is when you have a lot of things open up in your computer. For example, I am hosting a Zoom session. So sometimes you'll see that when I refresh my page, the changes come in a bit late. So the cache memory, the RAM, okay, it's getting slower. Okay, so this is the changes that I get. Now, is there anyone who is facing an error or is facing issues with this? By the way, have a look at this. Thank you for reminding me on this, Ashnil. When you have a hash here in front of the file name, what it simply indicates is that you have not saved it yet. Okay, so you need to save the file first. Let's go and change the color and let's see how fast it picks up now. So background color, let's go and change it to light blue. Okay, LIGHTBLUE, light blue. And Control S to save. Refresh the browser. Changes now. All right, thank you. Now in your style.css, let's go and apply more changes. Okay, so first of next change is have a look at your paragraph. It's aligned to the left hand side. Let's go either align it to center or right. Okay, so this is what you can do. So p tag, open and close parenthesis. Okay, so in here you will do a text alignment. So text hyphen align colon, let's put it to right followed by a semicolon. Now your declaration, please ensure text align is a property and the value is right. Now how do I know text align is a property? Those are specific CSS codes which we will learn it in weeks to come. Okay, probably by next week we'll start focusing on this. So once you're done with that, press Ctrl S to save, go back to your browser, F5 to refresh. So you are able to move the entire thing to the right hand side. All good, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what if, let's say I want to have everything, all of those text right in the center of the page. So it has to do with text align center. Now, either I can do the following. I can put all the H1s to centered, H2 to centered, and paragraph to centered as well. Or the next best option is this. I can remove this and I can put something like that. So the body basically controls the entire set of texts. So in the body, I will put down text hyphen align, and then I will put it as center. Spelling of center is not CENTRE. Center is for supermarkets or shops. ER means in the middle. Okay, Control S to save. Go and refresh your browser so everything is centered. All good, everyone?
Yep, so far good.
All right. Now, next up is different types of selectors. Now, having different types of selectors is good, but sometimes it may be problematic. For instance, have a look at our web page, external.css. You have two H1s. Now, if you want to give these two H1s different colors, it may be problematic when you have an external style sheet. Because if I would do this, let's say I do H1 and then open and close parenthesis. And if I want to have a color as red for only Fiji National University. So two of these changes, do you see that? So this is where we have problems with selectors. However, every problem has its own solution. And therefore, if we have something like this, we can often have ID or class selectors. Okay, now ID or class selector is used in scenarios as such. So let's go and insert in an ID first for heading 1. So this one has changed into color red. Now I want CEST, College of Engineering, Science and Technology, to be in color blue. Okay, so what I can do is I can always go and add an ID. Now, how do you add an ID? To add an ID, so right next to the second heading 1, I put down ID is equals to, you can give any name, in fact. Okay, so you can give the name as blue H1. And Control S to save. Done. So once you've done that, let's go and call out this ID. Now, how do you call out IDs in CSS? Now, all IDs are generally called out using a hashtag. Okay, so hashtag, what is the name of your ID? Blue H1. So over here, blue H1, open and close parenthesis, and you'll change the color to blue followed by a semicolon. And you can go and refresh it in your browser. Now it changes the color to blue. Do you see that? Pretty interesting. Now, something similar to IDs is what we call it as classes. Now, classes can be used for the purpose of selectors or selecting a specific HTML element. For instance, if you have a look at your paragraph, you have two paragraph tags. Let's say paragraph tag, the first one, you want to have it in a, you want to have a background color to that particular paragraph. And let's go and plot in a paragraph color of, let's say we have light blue, let's say orange. Let's go and feed that in. Okay, over here. So you have a paragraph tag, sorry, not tag, paragraph selector, open and close parenthesis. Okay, and have a background color of orange. So your value is orange, property is background color. Control S to save. Go back to your browser, F5 to refresh. Notice what happens. Now both your paragraphs are have a background color of orange. Now, let's say you want to have a background, but the first paragraph is orange and the other one is red. So how do you go and manipulate this? Now, the first way of doing it is to the use of an ID. The second way of doing it is to the use of a class. Now, there's no major difference. The difference is in the way of you actually call them out in a style sheet. So let's go and put in a class in there, okay? So this one over here, just like we had for ID, so class is equals to, you can have this as red P or red paragraph, Control S to save. Once you've done that, let's go and call it out in our style sheet. So this one was red P. Now, remember IDs, we normally call it out using a hashtag. With classes, you call it out by a period, a full stop sign, okay? And open parenthesis, followed by a close parenthesis, indent towards the right, background, hyphen color, and this is red followed by a semicolon. Control S to save, go back to your browser, F5 to refresh. Now, if you're thinking, how is this related to a website? Believe me, when you are actually working with an actual website, you'll use a lot of IDs and you'll use a lot of classes. Okay, so sticking to the basics is very important. If you know the basics very, very well, you will have a lot of ideas coming into your mind when you are building a website. I'm guessing all of your CSI students, when you do CIN628, not only you have to create a website, but you'll actually attach a database to the website. Okay, that means you are able to save data. When you manipulate some data on your web page, at the back end, it will save everything up. How do you think you are able to log in every time? Let's say when you log into Facebook, you enter your username and password. How are you able to log in? Because your records are stored somewhere in a database. How do you feel that, or what do you think the photos that you upload on Facebook, how are you able to retrieve them every now and then? They're stored somewhere. They're stored in a database. Okay, 628, CIN628 teaches you all those things. This over here, we're learning the basic static website. So whereby you just use a website to display certain types of information, it's called a static website. Whereby you have a data attached to the back end of a website, it's called a dynamic website. Okay, so this is on selectors. So generally you can have styling applied on 3 types of selectors. You can have a HTML element selector, you can have an ID selector, and you can have a class selector. The difference between the 3 is as such. With a HTML element selector, you can have directly call out H1. With the ID selector, first of all, you have to apply an ID to the HTML element. For example, we did it here. We applied an ID. ID is equals to blue H1. So to call it out, you will use a hashtag blue H1, and then you'll apply a declaration to it. Now, another type is class. With class, first of all, you have to declare your class. So you have called out, so you have declared your class as red P, and then to call it out, so you use a period sign or period red P, and then followed by a declaration which has some properties and values. So this is the 3 major different types of styling, and very, very important. Now, next up, I have about 2 more exercises that we'll do for the day. The very first one is a simple one, and we'll apply it in our style sheet. Is you inserting in a comment. Okay, so for instance, right above your blue H1, we can always go and insert a comment. HTML and CSS comments, they play the same role. However, they are written very differently. Playing the same role is in terms of that they advise a developer what code was inserted where and for what purpose. Okay. However, okay, the writing way or the way it is written is different. Now, with a CSS, you have a backslash followed by a asterisk, and then you'll write down the comment. So in this case, color blue applied to heading 1, and then you'll close it off followed by an asterisk and a backslash. Often if you get confused with backslash and forward slash, so if you look at your numeric keypad where you have numbers, you have asterisk and then you have a backslash. Just a quick and easy way to remember it. Now Control S to save, refresh the browser, see if it messes up your page. If it doesn't, that means this is good. Likewise, let's go and insert in another comment. Let's say with the red P. So comment, backslash, asterisk. You can write down red background color for a paragraph. Control S to save. And also please go and refresh your browser to see everything is in line. All set? Now, my next exercise for today and the very last exercise is on CSS colors. Now with CSS colors, there are three major ways in which, or three major components in which you can add colors. You can add color to background. Now you can add color to entire web page, which we have done. Remember here, background color for the body section is light blue. Or you can add background color to individual elements. For example, here, the paragraph, we have set out the color as red and orange. You can also apply it to heading as well. So that's a background color, which we have done it already. Now the next one is on text color. Now we've also worked with text colors so far. So your text for heading 1, you have changed the color to red. You have text to paragraph, you have changed the color to orange and so forth. Okay, so that's about changing text color. The last type of color that we have is on borders. Now we have not worked with borders yet, and this is where I want, or this is where we'll work in it. Now let's go and apply a border to the entire of the text that we have so far. Okay, that means you should have a border line coming in. Now, it's a very simple set of code, okay, yet it can be very confusing. Okay, so you've already called out the selector for body so far. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to put in a declaration. Now your declaration here would be border and then followed by a semicolon. So your property is border, not semicolon but colon. It's a colon. Property is border and then colon. Now in it, the first thing that you do is the order is this. You need to give the size of your border. You need to indicate what kind of a border it is, and then you'll need to give in your color. A very good example is this. So border size is 2 pixels. What type? It's a solid border. That means you need to have solid lines, and the color is give me a color, someone. Purple. And the color is purple. So this is the structure. Border, size, type, color. Size 2 pixels, type is solid, and the color is purple. Control S to save, go back to your browser, F5 to refresh, and you have a border coming in. If you feel the border is, the size is too small, you can increase it, okay? So you can always do a trial and error. Let's put down 20 pixels. See what do you get. That's 20 pixels. Are you able to see that? Now, there are other elements in this. So for your 20 pixels, the type you have solid at the moment, you can have dotted. Let's see if dotted works, okay? There you go. There's another type is dashed. Dash looks something like this, okay? Generally, if you're creating a website, solid border is something that you need, but in instances, you might need dashed or dotted, and there are other ways. There are other types of borders that you will learn in next week's class. All right, so this is on border colors. Pretty simple, straightforward. Now, to sum it up for today's class, in today's class, first of all, we've looked at the introduction of CSS. Now, CSS basically stands for cascading style sheets. What does it do? It basically is used to display HTML elements or style HTML elements on a screen or other media screen types. Now, CSS can control multiple layouts at once. Now, for instance, at the moment, we've only worked with one HTML page. However, if you would insert this link into another HTML page, so your style.css file will be able to control more than one HTML pages because the link is inserted into that particular page as well. Okay, so can control multiple layout at once. And we've also learned that there are 3 types of CSS: inline, internal, and external. Now with CSS, we have some form of syntaxes. So the syntaxes comes in terms of a selector and the declaration. So the selector is basically the HTML element, or you can have an ID selector or a class selector. Now with the declaration, you have property and value. So far in today's class, we have looked at the color property, we have looked at text align property, we have looked at background color property, and then we have looked at border property. And the values we have practiced is as thus. Now, apart from that, you should know with inline CSS, you are able to control a single HTML element. With internal, you can control style for a single HTML page. With external, you can control style for an entire website to the use of a file. Okay, so that's on inline, internal, and external CSS. Moreover, we have looked at inserting comments in CSS. Now the comments are very much different from what you have in HTML. However, it does the same work. Now with colors, you can apply colors in CSS in 3 different components. You can apply in terms of background color. Now background color can be applied in the entire body section or the single elements. Moreover, we have text color, okay, and then border color. Now with border color, it's a bit tricky because you have 3 values in border color. So the property itself is border, and the values are basically the size, the type, and then the color, followed by a semicolon. So this concludes our class on introduction to CSS. Now, what I'll be doing is I will be putting up all the files right underneath your CSS, where you have CSS breakdown for today's class. I'll put down all the files in there so that you have a copy of the files with you. All right. Is there any questions or any queries from anyone before we close off the class for today?
No, sir.
No? Okay. If no questions, thank you very much, everyone, for joining in. I very much appreciate your time and effort to come in and join in the class, and also your active participation and contribution to the class. Please start working on your project too, okay? And also the very same time, keep on practicing HTML and CSS. Here's the thing. If you work on your project too, and if you are able to do well, you should be able to work on and create very simple and clean websites. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. See you all in next week's Thursday's class. Till then, take care, stay safe. God bless you. Menaka, everyone.
Thank you, sir.